us from the friendly confines of the upper Hudson River Valley, just outside New York City. I am based in the ATL Shouty. All right, making news today, Donald Trump seething because that Supreme Court that he thought was in his pocket has ruled against him on the tariff issue. There's what, about $175 billion floating around out there that Americans, taxpayers, will never see. All right, let's get into it. Brock and Ellis, your thoughts. Trump says, I don't care. I'm issuing more tariffs, as a matter of fact, as we speak right now.
Yeah, so he decided he can barrel in and tariff at 10% anyway, even
Right.
though the Supreme Court shot down the plan. Really, when the Supreme Court was trying to bail out a horrendous economic strategy that he put in place that's tanking the economy, crushing our trade deficit, GDP at 1.2% in Q4, like they're giving him an out. But he
Right.
can't help himself. He can't stand to lose, and he's probably, has been using the tariffs as a personal way to get funded by foreign companies. So everyone had to curry favor with him. So from his point of view, whoa, this hurts him and his ability to monetize the presidency. So he's up in arms about it. I guess it's a victory. I mean,
Yeah.
it is a victory, but still, 3 out of the 6 Supreme Court members, voted for something that is so clearly
Wrong.
illegal and
Right.
against the unconstitutional. It's a pretty clear, and yet 3 of them still rolled along. So
Right.
I guess it's happy it's a win, but it just shows how deeply entrenched some of them are. But we'll take
Yeah.
it, right?
And are going to remain there. Now, what happens? Do we wag the dog? I mean, we've got this buildup focused on Iran. Is he going to strike Iran? They were talking about strikes coming on Saturday. For no reason. He's out here talking crazy again. He sounds like the drunk uncle at the end of the dinner table throwing carrots at everybody. It doesn't make any sense to me why we're even considering, why we're wasting our resources on a military buildup in Iran. It's only to deflect, right? Now he wants to deflect from tariffs so he can keep running the tariffs. And he also wants to deflect from the Epstein files.
I mean, it's another undeclared war
Right,
without a reasoning
right,
and really a sense that a Trump sense and the entire administration rolling along that they don't have to give a reason. But this is an act of war without a mission and without even any kind of explanation to the American public of how this is in our national best interest. I think we're just getting manipulated and played by Israel because they want Iran, that's their biggest enemy
right,
ultimately.
right.
And I don't know. I mean, there's a part of me that's starting to believe that because Israel's got their tentacles around the Epstein files, because we kind of have figured out that Epstein's a Mossad agent and we
Right.
know there's videos and shit, that Trump doesn't want to do anything that could upset Netanyahu because they have him compromised.
Dead to
Because I can't
rights.
figure. I mean, that's as plausible an explanation as anything I can come up with.
Right, right. Senator Murkowski, remember Lisa was really afraid to speak out. All of a sudden, she's got a statement out. She put out a statement saying that, there is limits on presidential power, right? And that's the thing. This guy is trying to snatch up so much power in authoritarian fashion. We know this is straight out of the authoritarian playbook. It's as if he checked it out of the library and he's, oh, check one, discredit the media. Number two, get the military behind me. Number three, cause chaos. Oh, by the way, black people are not coming outside. I know this is a separate conversation, but just want to remind you we need to touch on that. But Lisa Murkowski says the Constitution explicitly grants Congress authority to regulate trade and impose tariffs, even if Congress fails to do that. Executive actions must be clearly based in law. This is a good ruling and a good day. So, the MAGA brand is crumbling, right? The facade is coming off the building, right? If MAGA were a neon sign, right? Like the Golden Arches, the A would be burnt out, right? It'd be missing a letter when you drove past it. It's a mess right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene is eating away at it from the inside. Trump looked absolutely horrible talking about rigging elections in Georgia. Did you see him? He does not look healthy, my friend.
Not
He
at
does
all.
not look healthy. And only about 100 people showed up. He decides to have a rally in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district. Like you think people are going to show up for that? He had about 100 people. That was about the head count. Probably more media, right, from the presidential pool and local media than people who actually attended the so-called rally. It's starting to fade, and we should kill it and put it out, put the flame out while it's burning low.
Yeah, and you got guy Thomas Massey's going hard after it, right? Because he's on the Epstein angle of things, and he's still not happy with where we stand. A lot of that podcast universe, right? Joe Rogan is slowly peeled away, and others with that Andrew Schultz. A lot of that manosphere podcasting crew has, look, they're going to go where the sentiment is, right? They don't lead sentiment; they're trying to read sentiment. So they don't want to be caught out, with their pants down. So they're kind of rolling with where, the vibe of the country around them, because they're hearing the complaints. The only one who doesn't hear it is Trump's so insulated or so delusional that it doesn't get to him. Because he's only thinking about himself. So none of it gets to him. But yeah, underneath the surface, and there's more and more congressmen who are not running. In the midterms, and rumors that another congressman is not only going to announce one of the congressmen who's announced that he's not running is supposedly rumored to say that he's actually resigning. And a resignation puts Mike Johnson down to like a one vote
margin.
A one vote margin. So I'm hoping to see that. Supposedly that should be coming out in the next couple of weeks.
Well, Brock, you can't be guardians of the pedophiles. Right? You can't, that's not what GOP stands for. There's no way that you can twist yourself into any kind of pretzel that makes it make sense. I mean, think about all the people that are involved in this. Remember, Pam Bondi, right, is in this waist high. Okay? She's been in it from the beginning. Right? And so have all the other heavy hitters in the Republican Party. Dershowitz, who was Ken Starr, right? Dershowitz and Ken Starr, they fought for Trump in the first impeachment trial.
Bill Barr, right? His father hired Epstein back in the day.
Right.
I mean,
they're all deep. Caught up. And so remember, when Pam Bondi was Attorney General, right? All these victims of Jeffrey Epstein tried to bring criminal charges, right? They wanted him charged criminally. Who wouldn't do it? Who wouldn't bring charges as the Attorney General? Right, Pammy Joe Bondi, right? Then all of a sudden he ends up with a sweetheart deal. And then they had another, I can't think of his name right offhand, I'm getting old, but they had another witness who was scheduled to testify against Epstein, and all of a sudden there was a $3 million
Well, Mark, even if they didn't want to chase down the pedophilia, if they just tracked and followed the money, we would be learning so much more, right? Guys like Wexner, who was in front of Congress the other day, would have to explain all the wire transfers that he sent over to Epstein, and how do you justify? Why would he be flowing him millions of dollars? He says he was conned, probably yet another MAGA lie. What we didn't even speak about, because we didn't do a podcast yesterday, we didn't even touch on the whole idea of the former Prince Andrew being brought up on criminal charges in the UK. Once again, not for the pedophilia, but for the fact that he had actually an official role in trade for the UK government, and apparently, the files came out, and he had a bunch of, basically commentary in there on what should have been, private or highly secure information. But it's going to be interesting because apparently those UK authorities are going to have or going to ask the US government, and that would be Pam Bondi, would be asking Bondi to send them unredacted parts of the Epstein files because they need them for their criminal case. And if Bondi says no to that, if Bondi says no to sending unredacted portions of the Epstein files so that the UK authorities can actually follow through on their case with the former Prince Andrew, what would be the justification for not sending that information to another law enforcement agency that has a high profile crime going on? So what's her out? I know she's going to say no, right? Because she has to, but what's the explanation for saying no to a foreign government, a foreign ally that's just trying to track down one of their royals that actually broke like secrecy laws? So,
and I don't know
how do you explain it?
But they searched Andrew's home today. They are doing, excuse me, Andrew, like, he's committed a crime. They actually are not worried about his royal status or what was his royal status. Everybody plays by the rules. And you can't get away with molesting children. Brock, there was a time when we didn't root for Russia. There was a time where we didn't approve of there was a time where child molesters couldn't move into your neighborhood. You still have a website where you can go to see where sex predators are living. All you got to do is type in your zip code and go to the website, and they'll tell you, why are we allowing them to run our country? It makes no sense.
It doesn't. But I would argue back and say the fact that America, the world, whatever, tolerated so much child molestation in the church, right? That really the Catholic Church, and rarely was there actually true accountability. They would just shuffle these people around to a different area and hope shit didn't go wrong again because they wanted to sweep it under the carpet. So I actually think there's precedent for this, for powerful people getting away with it, but not at a government level, not all the way up to the presidency, right? So you told me a year ago that this wasn't going away. And I finally have to come around to believing you because it's just getting harder and harder. The walls keep closing in a little bit more, even if it's too slow for most of us.
Yeah. Have you noticed that Jarvanka has stayed away from the Epstein situation? I mean, they want nothing to do with basically Trump 2.0. They hide.
No, Jared's running around trying to make money in Gaza, right? So he's, as usual, trying to exploit the situation to make some money. Ivanka has been she's disappeared.
Yes, indeed. And, I guess at some point you got to try to remake yourself. And I don't know how the Trump family does it besides Mary and the I think it's not her brother, but maybe her cousin. Besides them, Fred's kids, that got screwed by Donald, because no one's immune, right? He doesn't care. If he'll do it to his own family, look what he's doing to us. He doesn't care about democracy. He cares about his bank account. And that's where we are. So, the fact that all these other nations are demanding accountability and demanding that you pay the price. I mean, remember, Prince Andrew was the primary trafficker of Virginia Giuffre. A woman who took her own life after she got that handsome settlement. I want to say it was upwards of $10 million, if my memory serves me correct. But, and then there was that eerie tweet where, she said, if something happens to me, I didn't do it to myself,
Mm-hmm.
but we already know what was done to her. She's already laid it out, you know, and I hope if there was foul play involved in her death that we are able to bring that person to justice. Because now we're learning, what oops meant, right? And all these little code words in the Epstein files, about, murdering people.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
this is more than just child sex trafficking.
Yeah, well, it's national security. It's
Right.
espionage, it's coercion. Hey, if Prince Andrew gave up UK state secrets,
Secrets.
he
Right.
wasn't the only one,
Right.
and who was benefiting from it. That's why I
Right.
go back to we're bombing Iran. Why is it the American military bombing Iran right now? Like, how does it make us more safe? What's our goal? And are we on board with it? And I would argue, no, we're not on
No.
board with it. Just like we weren't on board with the Venezuelan bombing the boats in the Bahamas. But until
Right.
we change the regime, Mark, right?
Right.
We're in the position, unfortunately, of still just watching it. So until we
Right.
hit the streets and do mass protests, um, Trump is still going to rant like a lunatic, as he did today. I saw some of the quotes, right? That the Supreme Court was swayed by foreign interests, right? He called them fools, like Justice Roberts and others are a fool. Amy Coney Barrett's a fool for
Right.
having ruled against them, right? So just goes to show he has no allies. You're his ally until you do something he doesn't like. And
Right.
then you're immediately his mortal enemy. And so why anyone has shown any loyalty to him just makes no fucking sense to me because it's
None
a
at all.
absolutely one-way street.
None at all. Are they afraid of him? I mean,
Some want the power, some want the money, and I think sometimes when they get into it, then they start getting afraid of it because they see the underbelly of what
yeah.
could go on and the crazies that are out there fucking heavily armed that
Right.
that white supremacy army that he's got running around.
Yeah. Speaking of the white supremacy army, there is new reporting on their training, which happened in March of 2025. Um, Apparently, these yahoos were shooting themselves on a regular basis during their training, trying to holster their weapons. And there was a report that in March of 2025, within a 2-day period, 3 separate trainees fired their weapons, striking themselves in the leg, trying to holster their weapon. These idiots kept their finger on the trigger while trying to put it in a holster. Yeah. What do you think's going to happen? Right? Like these guys are blowing their own toes off, and now we've got them on the streets after 47 days, and we wonder why they're killing people. These are not highly trained, officers of the law. These are 3%ers, oath keepers, right? January 6ers. These are not law enforcement officials. And we've got to get these people off the street because who knows where they're going next, right? It's anybody's guess. I'm predicting it's going to be a black or brown city.
I've
Atlanta,
been
Memphis.
seeing some rumblings of a lot of activity in Nashville, because the governor's on board, of course, Bill
Yeah.
Lee, and so a lot of shit's been going on in Nashville, which didn't surprise me that they would move from Minneapolis next to like a southern city where they'd have the support.
Right.
But if you listen to Trump from 48 hours ago, as we talked about on the podcast on Wednesday, he was talking, he was lobbing out Atlanta.
Yep.
So I don't know
And
if
we're not
they.
going to have it.
Yeah.
We are not going to have it. But here's the thing, though, Brock. Remember, a lot of these southern cities are fighting back against these ICE facilities.
Mm-hmm.
We got Social Circle, which is deep red, red as you can get, fire engine red. And they said no to one of these detention facilities. We don't want it. NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? So, you're getting some pushback. But think about how stupid it would be to go into Nashville, right? You've got, the heart of the country music world there. That is the capital of country music. huge record labels, huge stars live there. There is incredible wealth there.
And
And
massive tourism to Nashville.
huge, huge. Who do you think works those exhibits, right? Who do you think works in Pigeon Forge? Who do you think works at those big exhibits in Nashville, in the heart of the city, those restaurants, right? Those nightclubs where the artists go to get discovered,
Yeah. Wherever
right?
there's hospitality, there's a lot of
A lot of
immigrants
immigration,
doing
right?
doing the shittiest jobs, but that
Right.
keeps the machine going.
And they make a ton of money, right? They're making a ton of money, and Nashville's a great southern city. You got professional sports there, right? You got great college sports.
When you say they, you mean
The state of
the white
Tennessee,
people, the state,
white, yeah, white
the
America, yeah,
owners, the
right,
ownership society makes a lot of money because
right,
they have this cheap labor running around. So yeah, they're going to
right,
shoot themselves in the foot like the farmers did. But
exactly.
it's just so bad for the like who wants to visit a city that has these 3%ers walking around with AK-47s? Like you said,
I
they
don't
can't
know how
even
to
put their
use them.
guns in a holster. And now we've given them even more advanced weaponry. But I gotta believe they just feel like Tennessee was a safer place to go after getting chased out of Minneapolis. Let's go
Yeah,
somewhere where the governor is going to be on board with us, and we're not going to have to deal with, any problems with police or National Guard, and they're whatever. They're Southern white people, so they're not going to come out and
right.
protest against brown people being rounded up. That must be the calculation.
Well, what happened in Minnesota, Minneapolis, right? White people came out to protest brown people being rounded up.
Yeah,
You know,
Northern white people though. Remember, our next question is whether Southern whites
right.
will come out.
Well, remember, the South has been born again. There are so many transplants, in Atlanta. Nobody's from Atlanta. You got to work hard to find a Grady baby now. That's a big hospital here where a lot of Atlantans are born. They're very proud of their Grady baby status, but there are also a lot of Fortune 500 companies here. A lot of people have come from not just all over the country, all over the world,
Yeah,
right, to come to Atlanta. And then you think about the same thing with country music in Nashville. It's huge. That is a huge industry. And if you don't believe it, just walk down that main street in Nashville where all those country bars, they're slam packed. Slam packed, like Thursday to Monday. Slam packed. And it's huge business and huge money out there. And so, again, when you want to shoot yourself in the foot, go right ahead. But, again, MAGA's been engaging with these self-inflicted wounds, for their entire run. It just doesn't end, for this. I mean, they don't make fatal mistakes, right? What has been fatal, in years past is no longer fatal. Pedophilia, for example,
yeah.
you
But
know,
they're definitely chipping away at the economy. If we stay on the tourism theme, Times had an article on it today. But the U.S. was the only like major country in the world that did not have an increase in tourism last year. The only one with a decline. It talked about like 11 million less visitors. I have a business in that plays into travel, and
yep.
we feel it. We've been seeing it. There's no doubt it's down. You can't find a Canadian fucking customer
Uh,
anywhere. Needle in a haystack. If you get a Canadian, like they are just not coming.
right.
But that's extended out into Europe. That's why GDP sucked in Q4. And the only things that are up in the economic data is delinquencies on subprime lenders,
Mortgage. You know who that is?
credit card balances
Latenesses.
up
Yep.
to a record, right? And we know these things creep up when the people that are on the lower end of the economic spectrum are
Yep.
feeling the pinch, and it shows up in that data, and they're the ultimate consumer though. So yeah, so the
Oh, yeah.
economics ties into the terrible strategic decision making, and just to go back to the point, Supreme Court
Right.
kind of probably felt that pain, right? CNBC probably called him and said, "Hey, let's get rid of these tariffs.
Right.
You're
Killing
killing
us.
the economy." And they gave Trump the out, and he still wants to have a terrible economic policy along with his terrible social policies, tax policies, and international
Well,
policies.
Rock, riddle me this, Batman. Where's the money going? Scott Bessent today on some podcast he was on indicated that Americans would never see the $175 billion that's already been raked in. Is that going straight into a Trump account?
Those tariff checks. We'll never see those tariff checks or a fraud. Always knew they were a fraud. They're not
Of
coming.
course.
I guess they're going into government coffers to offset all the tax cuts that went to the wealthiest. The deficit's still going up even with the tariff money coming in.
Right.
So did you see Pritzker sent an invoice to Trump for like $8.6 billion, like for the consumers, the people of Chicago. But apparently
Right.
some money may go back to the corporations. But the question is, will prices roll back? Will
No.
we ever see? No, no, the prices will
No.
stick, right? So the
No.
corporations will be just fine. They'll keep
Yep.
their prices high and they'll pay lower tariffs. So good for their profits. The
Yep.
loser as usual,
Us.
rank and file American citizen.
Yep. And of course the question we've been asking is, when will we hit the tipping point? When will it be enough to make us go shut down the government apparatus and blow this thing up? Because Trump has no idea what he's doing. He doesn't know how to govern. He's looting. He doesn't have anyone around him that's any good at anything. Bessent, I don't even know how these guys got rich. How did Lutnick get rich? He brought his daughter and her girlfriends to Epstein Island because it was convenient. This guy's an idiot. How did he
What?
get rich? God Almighty.
Lutnick's company, Cantor Fitzgerald, bought like tariff protection at 25 to 30 cents on the dollar. So his business stands to benefit massively with the tariffs getting rolled back. So he basically bet against the tariffs. His sons run the company now. I'm sure they talk, right? Just like
Right.
Trump and his sons. So that's how people make money, because people on the inside know what's going on. You don't have to be a genius when
Right.
you know it's like
But you got inside
Back to the
information.
Future, when they're Back to the Future, when they're betting on sporting games from
Right.
20 years ago, when they already know
Who
the
won?
outcome, right? Like Lutnick had a perfect hedge. He knew this shit wasn't going to work, so therefore it's not what he told the American public. But what was his company doing? Benefiting off it. That's
Right.
you know,
Folks may
crony,
remember the
that's
name.
crony capitalism.
Yeah. Folks may remember the name Cantor Fitzgerald from 9/11. They lost
Yeah.
quite a few of
More than anyone.
employees. Yeah. It's sad stuff. Nonetheless, all right, let's wrap up this Friday with a couple of quick hits. What do you got for me?
What do I got for you? Did you see down in New Mexico? Two things. Number
Mhm.
one, the Republicans haven't even. I think the deadline went by. They don't even have a candidate for Senate this year. They're literally not running. There's only 100 senators, right? Two in each state.
Right.
They're not. They couldn't even find a candidate to run for Senate, which tells you like what's going on with MAGA. Like, did no one think they had any chance in New Mexico? You don't even think of that as that much of a blue state. Second of
No.
all, down in New Mexico, they're finally, after decades, going to investigate what went on at that Epstein Ranch down there, because that was the other property you had where young women apparently disappeared. And
Right.
there's some references to, bodies, humans
Yep.
being lost down there. So just a couple interesting tidbits out of the
Yeah.
Southwest.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the Epstein tentacles. Wow. The length is just it's maddening. All right, another sad MAGA story. Lucy Harrison we talked about this before the show, Brock. 23 years old, got into an argument with her dad about MAGA. She obviously was on the right side of history. He was on the wrong side, and he ended up murdering her. But this happened in Texas, and he's not being charged. How do you get away with killing your daughter? I mean, what is that? Is that stand your ground? Is that, parental justice? Like, how do you justify? Weren't her civil rights by? Oh, we don't have a civil rights department anymore in the federal government. Like, I don't get it. How is this happening? And why are we not talking about this in mainstream media?
Okay, well, mainstream media is so dominated by the propagandizers of the right that a story that reflects poorly on MAGA, and I can't imagine a story that reflects more poorly, right? A father kills his own daughter over an argument. Like, what were they arguing? Tax policy, ICE? Like, what issue? Like, hit this old white guy.
Right.
So in the heart that he couldn't function, that he had needed to kill the daughter to shut her up, right? So yes, the MAGA media didn't mention this at all. I guarantee it. Fox News Network doesn't even know it happened. But I'm curious about the piece of the puzzle of why there's no charges. Like, how do you justify no charges in?
She's in her own home. If it happened in the home, and I got to read more on it, I'm going to continue to follow this story. I mean, the British immigrant was her father, the white MAGA father, the British immigrant, right? So this is not the brown people killing white women, which is the story we always hear, right? They always run with that one. But the media has let us down the last 10 years so enormously. Brock, I got to tell you, I've been out of it for, going on 8 years. I don't miss it at all with what they're doing now. I don't miss it at all. And they don't pay enough, to convince me to give up my integrity and to go on there and lie, about things that are actually like when I worked at a Fox affiliate, we used to get these Obama polls from the official Fox pollsters, Rasmussen, and you would, like, literally, I think this was before they coined the phrase Earth 1 and Earth 2. You're like, where is he getting this information that all of America hates him, hates Obama? And we'd have to interview this guy and ask him these questions, and it was insane. So the media, has dropped the ball again in an effort to make money, right? Because remember, when in the 70s and 80s, you had 5 choices on your dial. Now you got 5,000, right? So the profit margins shrunk. So they did everything they could possibly think of, to get those margins back up to what they were used to do, just making ridiculous money hand over fist. And they're never going to see that day again. So they got to stick with, the propaganda, because that's what's paying the bill.
Yeah, the right buried that story. I mean, like, that's...
Yeah.
So let's just circle back to where we started. Do you think that Trump raging at the Supreme Court, a Supreme Court that most of us, sane America, thinks is in his pocket and has bent over backwards and really going against the Constitution, many of them have lied from when they were getting their confirmation hearings to what they've actually done in the seat. They've gone back and broken precedent, which they all said was, Roe v. Wade. Well, that's precedent. We'll never address that, right? Do you think Trump raging at this right-wing Project 2025 beloved Supreme Court will peel away any of his core supporters in any way, shape, or form? Does he
only the ones that are feeling the pain, right? And that number is getting bigger and bigger every day. The farmers are crying now, again, right? Urging Trump to do something else. No, the farmers aren't working, right? They got nobody to sell to. right? So the people feeling the pain, right? The people at that's beef processing plant out in Nebraska, right? The people feeling the pain are peeling away. They need a better quality of life, right? You can't eat your racism, and and I say that because I think the White House has done everything possible to try to get black people out on the streets,
Hmm.
right? I mean, look at the 8 video, right? Like, why would you post that? Like, out of the blue. Look, we're not falling for the okie doke. You're not just gonna be blowing us away,
Yep.
shooting us, and
But
having black bodies in the street in order to prove your point. And I think this Supreme Court is going to try to save its legacy at some point. I mean, say what we want about John Roberts, he's a smart guy. They've got to know that history is going to look at them like, wow, what the hell happened here?
or
It
they've
ain't cool.
or they've unleashed too much. But what today reminded me of is almost like a year ago that Chuck Grassley town hall where we were surprised that those old white guys in there were yelling at Grassley saying, "Oh, Trump's not honoring the separation of powers and he's got to stay away from the courts and let the courts be independent." It was like, whoa, that struck a chord in like central Iowa. That's what they're yelling at Chuck Grassley about.
Yeah,
So now here we are a year later. Now he's yelling at the Supreme Court, and I just wonder if there's still that, you know,
it's got to be.
that group of MAGA who are also like still kind of believe in the Constitution because they do talk like they're originalists and like they're,
Right.
they use that Constitution excuse for a lot of other shit.
Yeah,
That,
when
that
it's convenient.
maybe some of them just like he's going too far. He's going, like this can't be calling the Supreme Court fools and saying that they're under foreign interests and then saying you're
Right.
going to ignore basically what the courts have ruled.
Right.
Maybe that's the sort of thing that does rile up some old white people, Second Amendment white people who actually believe in that kind of shit.
Right. Right.
That's me. That's me being hopeful again, Mark. That
Right.
Trump has lost some support when he goes off the rails like he did today.
Yeah.
Possibly wishful thinking.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us on this Friday. Let's get back together, Brock, and do it again tomorrow. Remember, folks, tell a friend about the podcast. Please share it, like it, subscribe. And hey, a great new announcement. Thanks to the efforts of my partner in crime, Brock and Ellis, we are now featured on Apple and Spotify and some other networks where you get your favorite podcasts. So please remember to subscribe, download the podcast, leave your comments, and coming up in the near future, Brock, I think with our new platforms, we got to do it just the Q&A. Ask us what you want, right? And let's let our listeners
Let him fire away.
Yeah.
Well, we thank our viewers for putting us in a position where we could get accepted or actually thought it was worthwhile to get on more of those audio platforms because not everyone watches the video feed, and I think that's kind of part of the benefit of being on some different places. So
Yes,
we
indeed.
appreciate it, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, listen on the go. You can power up in your car. It's awesome. All right, Brock, have a great night, my friend. We'll holler.
All right. See you tomorrow, Mark. Bye.
Yes, sir.